There's a SA scene that occurs in Andor with a certain character, and then they flat out call out the actual R word in Andor, which was surprising as hell when John and I watched it a couple weeks ago. And it was a whole thing because normally when we watch something and it's done, we move on. We're like, all right, prep the footage, let's get going. And John and I just kept talking about, like, I can't believe Star Wars did this. This is crazy. My wife was asleep and she was sleeping and she doesn't watch Andor. I was like, come on, Kerm, like, you're not gonna believe what Star Wars just did. Like, I can't believe they had this scene and they said the word.
I would love to know her first thoughts on waking. Of like, you're waking me up to talk about Star Wars.
But even she was like, what? They did that? It's surprising. And we're not making light of the subject.
The impact.
It was the impact of the fact that they were willing to do this on a season 2 of a Disney Plus show.
Yeah.
With very little, I mean, on the screeners, they didn't give a warning. So I don't know what the warning was when people actually watched it, but that is a highly sensitive, it is way more than anything Daredevil Born Again did. Daredevil Born Again, sure, it's violent and gory, whatever. We're America. We handle that shit on our television. But this stuff, they don't even touch sex. They don't even show that. Andor season 1 implied that people were sleeping together. That was about as far as they went. They do not do sex. So the fact that they did this, and when John and I were watching it, it was such an experience of, okay, yeah, they're teasing it, but they're not going to do it. It's like saying it in the reaction, like they wouldn't go that far. Then you get to the next episode, like, oh my God, they're really like going there with this. And we had mixed opinions about the context of how it was done and which character and like, but and of course it was super predictable that there would be certain outlets that are like, this is why Star Wars is dead. And this is why, because people were not happy. And I think that is part of a larger discussion to be had, though, of the Star Wars image that it is. Like, some people we knew right away were not going to be on board with it, of being able to do that.
Sure.
Because of
people
what
don't
Star
like
Wars
bricks in Star Wars.
I know, but something like this, though, I think Star Wars really is that kind of thing where it's all ages, all families could watch this. And that is the kind of thing where, in my personal opinion, I do think that it's the parent should be given a heads up that this show will do that scene. I don't think it's something that you just turn on with the family and like, oh shit, now I got to have a conversation with my kid about something. That is my personal opinion of it. That does not mean that I do not believe that Star Wars should stray away from being able to talk about that. So before we go into more thoughts, John, what did Tony Gilroy say in the interview when talking about it?
So the quote,
and replace the R, just word something else.
I will navigate it with as little garish silliness as I can.
Yeah.
When asked about the big scene, Andor creator Tony Gilroy explained to The Hollywood Reporter that when telling a story about war, shying away from assault didn't feel truthful. Quote, I get one shot to tell everything I know or can discover or that I've learned about revolution, about battles, with as many incidents and as many colors as I can get in there without having the story tip over. Says Gilroy. I mean, let's be honest, man, the history of civilization, there's a huge arterial component of it that's assault. All of us, who we are all the product of that kind of assault. I mean, armies and powers throughout history have committed it. So to not touch on it in some way, it just was organic and it felt right. Coming about it as a power trip for this guy. I was really trying to make a path for Bix that would ultimately lead to clarity, but a difficult path to get back to clarity.
Yes, and there's a lot of people that is one of those subjects that I know plenty of women that if they're exposed to that, it can be very triggering for them, considering how many women go through this, right? I also, though, very much agree with Tony Gilroy on that. Like, I talked to Michael Tesler, who is our Star Wars aficionado, and he's like, oh, yeah, I actually wasn't, I mean, yeah, of course this would happen in the Empire. They're Nazis.
Yeah.
So it works contextually wise. And we were talking last week about Disney, the future is dark, and this is mature. And I feel like the maturity is there. But I can see how people can feel like there's kind of a skewed voice here, though, when you have something like Andor, which is so mature and really pushing the envelope on the maturity of what you can do. But then like a few weeks ago, we had Skeleton Crew, which is the total antithesis to this. And is this lining up more with the Star Wars vision of what they actually are aiming for? Because I don't think the movies approach this. I personally feel like this, I'm not saying like double down, do more of this in Star Wars. I'm saying the fact that they're willing to do this, and that Tony Gilroy said that Disney did not give any pushback to him actually doing this. He didn't have to fight at all to do it. To me, is a good sign about where Disney is willing to evolve to. And if we can let Star Wars mature like that into its themes more, that can also have a good effect on the other stuff, like how we want stuff like Marvel to go darker, you know? I think this is actually a bold thing, and it's a very real thing, especially if Andor's the real world of Star Wars. I have no issue that they did that, other than like, yeah, you should probably give like a heads up that you will do shit like this in your show.
Yeah, I haven't seen the regular release. I don't know if there was like a disclaimer or warning, but I think it's really important that in a show that is as mature as Andor is, it's not like a curveball. It's a mature show. I don't think people are going to make it, season 2, episode 3 into something that are immature. Hopefully, I think it's important that in war, and it's called Star Wars, which is always the thing I try to stress to people, is war is the most heinous thing human beings do to each other. We need to make sure it's clear that this heinous act is unacceptable. And so I think having a character as obviously evil doing something evil is part of the human condition. And I think these stories are meant to show us the worst of ourselves so we reflect on it. I think you're supposed to get introspective about art. It's supposed to be bearing other people's souls, so your own soul feels a kinship to the horror of it. If you identify with the Nazis,
the Empire,
then perhaps you should seek help. So therefore, I think you're supposed to feel uncomfortable. You should feel horror. And I think that's a positive to feel horror. And I think that a great example you just gave us, Skeleton Crew, was a few weeks ago. If you like kid Star Wars, you got a new one. If you like Star Wars to grow up, we're getting that right now. And Star Wars was invented in the 70s. So there are people that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. You know, if you watch that as an adult then and you're still alive, you're not young. And if you watched it when the prequels came out, you're not young. You know, we're of a certain maturity that I think that this is a great example of franchises appealing to all ages, not all ages. There's a big difference between all ages and all ages. And I think that Skeleton Crew is for all ages. I think we need stuff to be more mature and to shine a light on the darkness of the human condition. I am really worried. The first step to tyranny is censorship. You know, that's how you win. You omit truths. History is written by the victors. That's why they put Martin Luther King photos in black and white that were in color. Now, not all of them were in color, but by changing some to black and white, it gives us a distance from how recently in history that was. It puts a distance between the fact that was in my case, my grandparents' generation, some people's parents' generation. That's not long ago. And we need to have some stuff put in our faces again because of how much the evils of the world can hide themselves because of the history written by the victors. So I think it's important that art show horror at times to grow us up. And I think Star Wars is a huge war that needs to be addressed. I think it's important.
I appreciate when you said too about the Empire. I appreciate that hey, we should remind people that the Empire is not cool.
Yeah.
That's the point of it. And we have to kind of drive that back home. Because there was a lot of people who were, of course it's like Twitter keyboard warriors and shit. And then what's that? Is that article Hollywood Reporter, right? That actually that did that. I believe this is like a THR article that we're
interviewing Tony Gilroy.
Yeah, where the headline is about this. So of course it was and I think it's cool that they're willing to do that. And I think for the future too, I've imagine if the Acolyte was willing to be R-rated, the show about their Sith, where they were able to not even do the sexual perversions, the ugliness of that, but do the violence. The
violence of being Sith and make it bad. Because Darth Vader's cool as hell. You need to make sure the Empire looks evil.
But do the actual violence, you know? If we can go down that path, sweet.
Yeah.
How awesome would that be? And I don't fault anyone, though, who does disagree with Andor doing that, turning on a Star Wars show and then this shit happening. I don't fault anyone for feeling like this doesn't belong in Star Wars, because you can't argue with the fact that Star Wars has been around for decades and they've never broached this. So
they've never broached a lot of stuff Andor's doing, though.
Yeah, exactly.
They've never made a slow burn mature, the prequels maybe is the closest because that was about trade war. but we haven't really had anything that felt so authentic about war.
But I think
Rogue One, which
I
is what
think
this is leading up to.
It's always been there, though. All these themes.
Sure.
This is the first time this is like a brand new theme
Understood.
that they are doing.
Yeah.
And I think that is the part where I feel like a lot of people are like, that just should not exist in here.
I think going la 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 about things that are bad puts us in a worse spot.
Right. And I think the argument that people probably make is that this is supposed to be escapism. But I'm like, but this escapism was intentionally meant to be some type of alternate mirror.
It's got war right there, escapism. I don't know. When I want to escape, I don't go, I'm going to put on Saving Private Ryan.
It's crazy. Sorry.
Just to add, I mean, we've done fun escapist Star Wars almost every time.
Right. Yeah. It's like
So
a
if we're gonna
90-10.
keep doing it, it seems reasonable to variate.
Yeah.
I agree. And and I love that Tony Gilroy was at the ready with a very nuanced and very reasonable perspective on why. Like his quote is exactly what, I would hope a creator that show. It wasn't like an edgelord choice.
Yeah.
It wasn't handled poorly. It was an important conversation about something that does happen in war and does happen in society, and art is a reflection of society. So if you've got the keys to something that's going to be watched by more people by having it being an IP, but if it's about war, I think it's fair. I do hope there was some sort of trigger warning for people. I don't know, but I do hope there was, because I can't imagine being I can't imagine being a woman. What the world is, to women is terrifying. To me, just as a man that is trying to be aware of my surroundings and trying to be aware of the world, I can't imagine what that's like as a baseline. So I feel such great, sympathy to anyone that has had anything on the shades of gray of that occur. If I stumbled across that would feel horrible.
Absolutely.
So I would absolutely hope there is something as a warning. But at the same time, I do think there are things we warn in our openings that are much lesser than that. So I would also hope that is warned. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes there's like the slightest of violence and there's like a weird thing and you're like, well, what was it? So this deserves it is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.